Hello friends, welcome to eStudents. Today we are going to learn about plant kingdom. So plant kingdom is going to be a very vast kind of chapter. So I have decided to break it out into different parts. So today we are going to give much more emphasis to algae. We are going to move on to bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and geosperms and so on. So this is how we are going to study it. Okay. So I am Shupriya Bose. So let's start plant kingdom. Alright. So plant kingdom has been plants have been a very fascinating part. Yeah. Botany is, we learn botany, this part of science dealing with plants has been one of the most fascinating parts of science. Plant kingdom, this kingdom, plant includes, first this kingdom plant includes green, brown and red algae. It includes liverworts, it includes mosses, ferns and sea plants with or without flowers. So plants do have flowers. There are plants that have flowers, there are plants that doesn't have flowers. Plants have been divided into two parts. Mainly it's called cryptogams and phanerogames. So we are going to learn all about that, but first we are going to learn about its major characteristics. What is the characteristics? If we talk about plant kingdom as a whole, what are the major characteristics of a plant kingdom? First of all, they are multicellular organisms with walled and frequently vacuolar eukaryotic cells. Cells, again, the biggest part of this particular thing, cells, they are eukaryotic. That means they have true nucleus, they have cytoplasm, they have Golgi bodies, they have mitochondria, ribosomes and so on. Now, they contain photosynthetic pigments in plastids. They are autotrophic, we all know they perform photosynthesis, they have chlorophylls. The main photosynthetic pigment, chlorophyll. Principal mode of nutrition is photosynthesis. The principal mode of nutrition. Remember, it is the principal mode of nutrition. They do have other modes of nutrition as well. If you talk about the Venus flytrap or the pitcher plant, you will understand that these plants are heterotrophic as well. They eat insects. So the principal mode of reproduction, if you talk about that, then it is autotrophic. They have chlorophyll, they perform photosynthesis and they are autotrophic in nature. But the number of plants have become absorptive as well. Primarily non-motile. These plants have roots, they have anchoring system that firmly anchors themselves in the substratum, right? They play a very important role in preventing soil erosion as well. So this is one of the very important part of this particular kingdom. So they are primarily non-motile, live anchored to the substratum. Their roots anchor themselves to the substratum firmly. Structural difference leading towards organs of photosynthesis, anchorage and support, and in higher forms towards specialized photosynthetic. Okay, there are higher forms that are specialized in photosynthesis, vascular and covering tissues. Reproduction, if you talk about reproduction, is primarily asexual or sexual. They have vegetative propagation as well, such as fragmentation. There are plants that even reproduce with leaves as well, leaves, stems and so on. If you talk about bryophyllum, it's a particular plant that reproduces with leaves as well. Okay, there are fine ridges in the leaves through which the bryophyllum reproduce. Now, reproduction is primarily sexual and asexual. The reproductive organs are multicellular. Okay, the reproductive organs in this case are very specially formed multicellular organs. Now, a multicellular embryo is formed during the development of zygote. It is very simple, very clear. Just what happens: the two gametes meet and they form a zygote, and after zygote, it forms an embryo. Algae lack embryo stage. You see, life cycle consists of alternating haploid and diploid. You see, it has the alternating haploid and diploid phases. That is the reason why it has alternation of generation. It is very important. This particular point, please underline. It is a multicellular embryo is formed during development from the zygote. Algae lacks embryo. Life cycle consists of alternating haploid gametophyte and diploid sporophytic generation. This point is going to be very important. This phenomenon is called alternation of generation. Alright, now thallophyte, thallus. The word thallophyte basically comes from the word thallus. Take a look at these particular plants. Just leave the writings and focus on the pictures. I always tell students to focus on the pictures because pictures are the things that help you understand, that help you remember things. Take a look at these pictures. This particular part, this algae. Okay, can you differentiate this algae between branches, leaves, shoot and root? Can you really differentiate? Take a look. Take a look at this particular picture. Can you differentiate which one is a leaf, which one is a branch, which one is a shoot or roots? No, right? That's the reason why they're called thallus. There are no distinct divisions between roots, stems, leaves, and so on. That's the reason why they're called thallus, and they are in this particular part called thallophyta. Thallophyta is a division of the plant kingdom, including primitive forms of plant life, showing a simple plant body. When life forms started to move from aquatic regions to the lands, okay, this algae started to evolve itself. So what really happened? This is the primitive forms of plant life, and it's showing a simple plant body. Remember one thing, nature is improving. Okay, at the primary state, when nature was at the primary stage, when life was forming, it was at first present inside the ocean, and then it started to reach land. At that point of time, there was no complexity in life. You see, they were very much simple. There were no branches, no leaves. These are called thallophyta. They form thallus. Now, including in unicellular to large algae, fungi, lichens. Now, including unicellular to large algae, there are different types of algae. Now, we have algae, fungi, and lichens. All of them, none of them, you see, if you consider all these forms, you will find out that there are no specific divisions. So what is lichen? It's a very important and very beautiful part of the plant kingdom. What happens is a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungi. This is called lichen. The first 10 phyla are referred to as the thallophytes. No specific divisions, thallophytes. Now, they are simple plants without roots, stems, or leaves. Simple, clear, very nice. Now, let's move on. Here we are going to talk about algae. A very interesting and a very simple part. Please concentrate. This is going to be very interesting. Algae is a term used to describe a large diverse group of eukaryotic photosynthetic organisms. They do perform photosynthesis. Take a look at this particular pond. See these algae that have grown in this particular pond. This is a very similar thing that you're going to find in your ponds nearby, all the aquatic bodies you have. You see, you will find out this green algae you will see. Okay, it's green, photosynthesis happens because chlorophyll is present here. Now, it's a large diverse group. Algae is a large diverse group. You can't really say that they are unicellular or multicellular. There's a huge diversity present. Okay, now, algae can be unicellular and living in colonies. Algae can be unicellular and starts to live in colonies, or they can even be multicellular. The wide variety of algae makes them hard to classify. When we were learning about the 5 kingdom classifications, interestingly, there was in the limitations of the 5 kingdom classifications, I'm sure you have understood that this is one of the biggest limitations of the 5 kingdom classification. What Whitaker did is that he had kept algae in the Protista kingdom. You remember, right? Here you understand that it's a wide variety. There are so many variations, and this is very hard to classify. That is the reason why putting algae in the Protista kingdom has become a drawback of the 5 kingdom classification. Now, algae span both terrestrial and marine in the marine environment, growing almost anywhere there is water and sunlight. You see, anywhere you will find out a moist region, there is water, there is ample amount of water, moisture, sunlight, you will see algae. So you will find algae in the walls as well. You will find algae in the mud where there have been lots and lots of moisture. Okay, so there you will find algae. It needs sunlight, it do have photosynthesis, right? Algae is like plants, are photosynthetic organisms. Very nice. Alright, so let's move on. Now, the branch of botany dealing with the study of algae is called phycology, okay, or algology. Now, there are 2 branches, very important, okay. First of all, we'll learn about phycology. It's a branch that deals with algae. The branch that deals with fungi is called mycology. Now, structure of reproduction. This is structure and reproduction of algae was written by Fritz. He is known as the father of algae. Very important. The father of algae, Fritz. Algae are defined as chlorophyllous and thalloid avascular plants with no cellular differentiation. Just what I said at the beginning, they don't have any cellular differentiation. They have chlorophyll and they don't have much vascular body. Algae are plants because they have chlorophyll A, cellulosic cell wall, and starch as food reserve. We know that in case of plant we have starch as food reserve, so does algae. That's the reason why it's a part of the plant kingdom. Now, large marine algae are generally known as seaweeds or kelp. You will find out there are large marine algae. They are known as seaweeds and kelp. Remember in the previous class when I was teaching about the 5 kingdom classification, we had a mention on the symbiotic relationship between algae and sea urchins, right? So here you will understand that these plants, these seaweeds, these kelps are large marine algae. Algae are mostly found in fresh water as well as in salt water. So you will find algae everywhere. You will find them in fresh water, you will find them in salt water, you will also find them in terrestrial conditions. They occur in a variety of other habitats like moist stones, soils and wood. The body of thallus of multicellular algae ranges from microscopic unicellular such as Chlamydomonas to colonial volvox, okay, aggregates of cells, fine filamentous heliothrics to flattened sheets of cells. Now you will be thinking, how do these algae look like, right? This is the question that would come to your mind. If I was just like you, a student, I would have also thought about this. But before showing you these algae, we will learn about the reproduction in algae. How do algae reproduce? Now, vegetative reproduction occurs through fragmentation. These fragments develop into thallus. In case of vegetative reproduction, what happens? An algal body fragments itself. It divides itself into different parts. It fragments itself, forms fragmentation, and each fragments, tiny little fragments, develop itself to new organisms. So it is very, very important. Now, asexual reproduction. Now we are going to talk about the different types of reproduction. First, we are going to learn about asexual reproduction. Then we are going to learn about sexual reproduction. Now, asexual reproduction occurs through the production of different types of spores like zoospores, hypnospores, achainates, endospores, cysts, etc. The most common being the zoospores. Zoospores is by far the most common and the most famous type of spores. Alright, they are flagellated, that is motile, as I told you before. Anything that has a flagella is of a locomotive structure. The flagella rotates and the body moves. So zoospores are flagellated and on germination gives rise to new plants. Now why do these zoospores have flagella? These zoospores have flagella so that they can move from one place to the other, which improves their chances of survival. Now we will talk about sexual reproduction. Now one more thing is that these zoospores not only increases their chances of survival, it also helps them to move from different places and spread out in the globe. Now then we will talk about sexual reproduction. It takes place through the fusion of two gametes. As we all know, in case of human beings as well, in any type of sexual reproduction, gametes are involved, okay? Gametes are involved. Now, first we are going to learn about isogamy. Occurs commonly in unicellular algae where male and female gametes are morphologically similar, but there are bit physiological differences, but not that much. In case of anisogamy, here what happens, the fusion of gametes where male gametes are comparatively smaller in size and are more active than female gametes, which are larger and sluggish. So here the dimorphism has started. First we had the isogamy, then we have the anisogamy where the dimorphism has already started, and then we have the oogamy. What is oogamy? Oogamy is the most advanced type of sexual reproduction where fusion is of one large non-motile static female gamete with a smaller motile male gamete that takes place. Out of topic, one thing that I would like to tell you is that if you think about human beings, us, how do we reproduce? We reproduce through the process of oogamy, right? The female gamete is a large static body, whereas the male gametes always compare in size. Whenever you are learning science, you must always compare things, okay? This will help you understand things. So, if you think about our reproduction, our gametes, the sperms are microscopic, very, very small as compared to the female gametes, right? And our sperms are motile. The female sperm, the female gametes are static. The egg is static, whereas the sperms are motile. So this is a part of oogamy. Similarly, So now let's get back to the topic. Okay, we have had an example of human beings. Now let's get back to the topic and understand what happens here. Oogamy is the most advanced type of sexual reproduction where fusion of one large non-motile female gamete with a small motile male gamete takes place. For example, volvox, okay, and fucus. Occurrence. Before I tell you anything, please take a look at the pictures. Where do you find algae? Pretty much everywhere, right? Algae may be aquatic, semi-aquatic, or terrestrial. That's the reason why I have shown you this particular picture. This algae, these types of algae is growing on in aquatic conditions in a pond, right? The water is stagnant, the algae is growing in this pond. Now take a look at this picture. Here, these algae is present in the rocks, okay? There is a water body near, so you can find out here all the algae are present in aquatic, semi-aquatic, and in the terrestrial condition as well. Now, algae may be free-floating or may remain attached to submerged stones. Take a look at these stones and you will understand things. Or to the bodies of other plants and animals in the water. Free-floating algae are called the planktons, whereas the attached and the bottom-dwelling algae are called the benthos. These free-flowing algae, anything which is free-flowing, all the free-flowing algae is called the planktons, and the algae that are attached to the bottom are called benthos. Now, we will talk about, first we are going to talk about green algae. Now this is going to be fun. First we have green algae, then we are going to move on. Green algae. You see, whenever we learn about things, you see there have been a problem that we have faced. We try to mug up these characteristics. Okay, there's a drawback. This mugging up process, first of all, is not at all efficient, and you will forget them very soon. So what's the use? So how do you prevent forgetting in the examination? How? You will use audio as well as visual. How? I'll show you. You see, think about this one. Habitat. First, let's talk about habitat. They're freshwater, they live in freshwater, marine and terrestrial conditions, these green algae. They have photosynthetic pigment, they have chlorophyll A and beta carotenoid. You see, take a look. Take a look at the color of this particular image. Take a look at this image. Green in color. They have chlorophyll. They do perform photosynthesis. Take a look. So, always read the image. Always read the image, that will help you understand well. So, green in color, okay? It is green in color, that means it has chlorophyll. Now, cell wall components, it has cellulose in the cell wall. It has cellulose in the cell wall. Storage food is starch, flagella, 2 flagella per cell. How many flagella do we have? How many flagella do we see here? 1, 2 flagella per cell. Mainly, okay, there are exceptions. Obviously, there are exceptions. So we will, but mainly you can say these are the characteristics. Asexual reproduction, reproduce vegetatively by fermentation or by formation of mitospores. Sexual reproduction happens is in case of isogamous, anisogamous, and oogamous type. Okay, all the 3 possible forms of sexual reproduction is found in green algae. What are the examples? Chlamydomonas, volvox, Ulothrix, Cara, ulva. So this is a picture that you can see is a figure of Chlamydomonas. Now, one more thing is that take a look at this very, very carefully. The Chlamydomonas that I have written here is in italics. Whenever you're writing the scientific name, write in italics. Now we are going to learn about red algae or rhodophyceae. Again, I will show you the picture. Please take a look. If we take a look at this picture, you will find out all these algae, all the pictures that are present here are red in color. That's the reason why they are called red algae rhodophyceae. Now they are marine or freshwater. They live in marine conditions or freshwater conditions. That means you're going to find them in seas and oceans as well as in ponds and lakes. Now, photosynthetic pigments, chlorophyll A and D and carotenoids and phycobilins are also present. Commonly called the red algae because of the presence of the red pigment called phycoerythrin. Okay, it is called phycoerythrin. this particular thing, phycology, is present here. Now, cell wall components such as cellulose, its cell wall is made up of cellulose. Stored food is Floridian starch. What is it? It is called Floridian starch. Never forget, the stored food is Floridian starch. Okay, alpha 1,4-glucan stored in cytosol. Flagella absent. Can you see any flagella in this image? In these image, in Gelidium or Gracilaria or Polycyphoria? Anything? Any flagella? Why? They don't have any locomotive structures like flagella. You can't see any one of them. You will not find any flagella. Take a look. Always use examples to understand the characteristics. Now, mode of reproduction, asexual and sexual. Asexual forms by fragmentation or by non-motile mitospores. Non-motile means the spores that cannot move. Now, sexual reproduction happens due to oogamous and gametes are non-motile. Okay, the process of sexual reproduction is oogamous. Now, examples of Polycyphoria, Gracilaria and Gelidium. So, if it is clear, let's move on to brown algae. Take a look, it's brown in color, so these are brown algae. Best example, Laminaria. Habitat, marine and freshwater. They dwell in both marine and freshwater conditions. Photosynthetic pigment, chlorophyll A and C, carotenoids and phycobilins are present. Shades of brown depends on xanthophyll pigments. The brown color that you can see here, the shades of brown depends on xanthophyll pigment. Fucoxanthin is also present. Cell wall components, cellulose and alginic acid is present here. Cellulose is covered by a gelatinous coating of algae. Now let's talk about stored food. The stored food is laminarin, mannitol. These are the stored food. You see, laminaria, you will understand. See the example, the best possible example is laminaria. So whenever you find out even if you forget, remember this example. So laminarin is the stored food. So flagella, it sometimes do have flagella. It has two flagella in most cases. Unequal lateral. Types of reproduction, asexual reproduction, by fragmentation or by motile zoospores. Now, sexual reproduction is isogamous, anisogamous and monogamous. So what are the examples? Ectocarpus, laminaria and ficus. Now, economic importance of algae. Now we are going to learn about the economic importance of algae. In different other places you will find out all the different types of economic importance which are not really economic importance, but that's the reason why I have got you the best economic importance is here. Algae are used as fodder and also in pisciculture. So if you are cultivating fish, okay, if you are cultivating fish, then you can use algae, these algae as the possible food of your fishes. Okay. On the other hand, fodder, if you have cattle in your house, then algae is given to them as fodder as well. Agar or China grass obtained from red algae such as Gracilaria and Gelidium is widely used in laboratories as a growing medium for tissue culture of microorganisms and to prepare various desserts, jellies and ice cream. You see, Gelidium, the algae that I have shown you before, is an edible algae. You will find them in jellies, you will find them in ice creams. Never thought that you are eating algae all around, have you? So you have been eating them. You have been eating them for a long time, you just didn't know about it. So many algae are used as food. Laminaria, sargassum, porphyria, vulva, etc. Chlorella, a unicellular alga, has a rich protein content and frequently used by space travelers as a food supplement. You see, in modern times, space rays have been one of the biggest front lines of the newspapers. How should astronauts live in the space in the adverse conditions where it is very difficult to cultivate food? So how do you feed them? Remedy? Here you go, algae. So these algae can be utilized to feed the astronauts that are living in the space stations, or that are venturing into space, a long journey. Okay, so these algae can be a very good source of nutrition for the astronauts. Alright. Algae have medicinal properties and also used to prepare antibiotics. So there is another use of algae. They have medicinal property, they can be used as antibiotics. Chlorella, Ascophyllum, Polysiphonia has been the algae that are used for medicinal purposes. Basically they are used for making antibiotics. Is it clear? So now we can clearly say that we have learned this particular part called algae. So with this I would like to say thank you to all of you, and I would want all of you to be present in the next class. Till then, thank you. Bye bye. Have a good day. Okay.